Welcome into the Rounding Third Baseball Podcast. No Nick tonight. You're just stuck with me and Sean. How we doing, Sean?
What's up, fellas? Good, man. How you doing?
Good. Good. What's new?
Oh, you know how it is, man. We're 1 week closer to pitchers and catchers, which means we're 1 week closer to those first spring training games, and pretty soon, next thing you know, it's gonna be like July 4th. So I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, and I know that when I see Truck Day, like I can
hmm
begin the countdown. Like Truck Day to me is it
Yeah,
should be a holiday in New England when they load up that truck and go to Florida.
yeah, for sure, for
So
sure. And we get it's kind of bonuses here. We get the World Baseball Classic starting up first week of March, um, so those will be good. I mean, obviously, it's gonna spring training games will be a little bit less because it's guys that won't be there, but we get to supplement that with some really good. I know we're going to talk about the World Baseball Classic too, but that's really like playoff atmosphere baseball. Like
oh yeah,
you get October baseball in March. So I'm thrilled for that to get started in a couple weeks.
yeah. Meaningful baseball in March is a beautiful thing because normally it's
For
the
sure.
slog of split squads and watching a bunch of guys who are going to be in the minor leagues in a couple weeks, but you
Right.
get to see some games with some real meaning. So, anyways, before we dive into everything, make sure to follow, like us, Facebook, YouTube, and we are also now streaming on Twitch. For those of you that may be joining us out there, or maybe are already on Twitch, you want to find us out there, you can find us over there. So, with that, let's go. Let's go right into the agenda for tonight, Sean. So, we got you mentioned World Baseball Classic, so WBC. Those rosters come out on 2/9. Everybody's expecting right now what I'm reading is that the Dominican roster is going to be absolutely loaded,
Disgusting.
and that the US roster is a dark horse to also be pretty loaded.
Yeah. No, I think, the U.S., like we had the past couple of times, there was the World Baseball Classic were we going to get a whole lot of opt-outs? Was, the Mike Trouts, were those guys going to opt out? I guess, from everything you've been reading over the winter, they all got together and they were like, let's give this thing a serious run. So I mean, I think the U.S. is going to be sneaky up there. I still think, I mean, the Dominican team is loaded, even though, no Carlos Correa, that was announced today.
Yep.
That he kind of, in the statement that they released, that it was a joint decision between him and the Minnesota Twins. But even without Correa, dude, that Puerto Rican team is nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, he certainly adds to it. That's a big
Yeah.
loss for them, but that's not a team now that's going to get bounced in the first round.
Yep.
So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and I have to admit, when they first announced the World Baseball Classic, the whole concept way back when, I thought this is just going to be the Olympics all over again. The premier guys aren't going to play because they don't want to get hurt or the teams won't let them, and you're going to end up with a bunch of second tier and minor league type guys on these rosters. But to your point, you're actually getting really good talent. They're building really good rosters, and the baseball is actually really entertaining. And they're meaningful games in March, which is like a complete bonus. So you look at this season, you're going to get meaningful games in March. You're going to get October. You're getting an extended season. It feels like of really good baseball. So it's been a win.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And then I know before we went live here, you and I were talking about it. It's a playoff atmosphere in March, and it's not just and it's not just like kudos to the players for, it's got to be an awesome feeling to have the opportunity to play baseball and represent your country, but also play against other really good countries that are being represented by top talent. Like it'd be one thing if the Dominican Republic had a nasty roster, and then the rest of them are all, B level players.
Right.
But no, I mean, you're getting like the best Americans, the best Dominicans, the best Puerto Ricans, the best Japanese players, like all this. It's been awesome. It's awesome, and not just good on the players, but good on these franchises and the owners and the front office people for letting these guys go. I mean, what started our conversation before we went on was talking about Ohtani with Japan, with the Japanese team. And the reported thing that I heard today is the Angels front office told the Japanese manager essentially that there's no restrictions, no holds barred on what they want to do with Ohtani. Now, I don't think they'll be thrilled to watch Ohtani pitch 1,000 innings in the tournament, right?
Full tilt in March.
But to give them the opportunity to go out there and say, hey, I mean, if you guys are in it and he's got to throw a game, throw a game. Like, get him out there. Like, use him in the middle of the lineup. Get him out there. Just the idea that the teams themselves, the owners in the front office, aren't hamstringing the people that are putting on this show, I think is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree, and also to Nick's point, I mean, the intent of the WBC was to be basically like a baseball World Cup. I feared they wouldn't let it happen. They,
Right.
in fact, they've allowed it to happen, and Shohei's a great example of that. And you don't. This is not like the Pro Bowl where everybody drops out.
Mhm.
You know, these guys are actually like excited to go play. They play for their team. They rep the team. It's great baseball. And a guy like Otani, who's on a 1-year arbitration contract, the Angels are saying, look, cut it loose, go do your thing. This might be the one thing I feel like MLB's actually gotten right, in that they've fully supported this and not treated it like it was some sort of optional second tier thing, like they're all behind it. So
Well, I think they probably got a bit of a front row seat to what the tournament could be if oodles of players did opt out and couldn't play. Like we talked about the U.S. roster. Like we saw what a United States roster of bare bones players look like, and not to take anything away from these guys, really. I mean, what an honor it is to be able to do that. But
right,
I mean, when the best American players aren't playing, the viewership and the fans just lost interest real quick.
yep,
And I think the league was probably able to see that. And so, whether they did a backdoor thing, like maybe pushing these Mike Trout and these guys or whether they all did it on their own, I don't know. But no Trevor Story, obviously with the elbow surgery, but
yeah,
I still think that roster for the United States is going to be sneaky, really good.
it is. It's going to be deep.
It's going to be. I think it's going to be a fun tournament to watch for pretty much all the clubs, I think.
Yeah, and Scott raises a good point. Yeah, the half that Dominican roster could come right off the Padres lineup card. So I'll be
You
curious
said
to see who's finally in.
It's Tuesday, right? That they're officially announced.
No,
right?
the 9th. So it's going to be, was that Thursday?
Oh, yeah. Today's Monday, Sean. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the 9th. So Thursday. Yeah. All right. Let me see real
Thursday.
quick. So this is what the projected. I think we've talked about it on here before. I'm sure we have. But the projected, just lineup projected. Julio Rodriguez at center, Jose Ramirez at second, Juan Soto in right, Vladdy Jr. at first, Rafi at DH, Manny Machado at third, Starling Marte in left, Jeremy Pena shortstop, and Gary Sanchez behind the plate.
Yep.
And then you have Sandy Alcantara, Framber Valdez, Luis Castillo, and Christian Javier are listed as 4 starters.
That's better than an all-star team of players. I mean, not only that, but you're going to have Jeremy Pena hitting 9th. Like that's where he's going to fall in that lineup.
Yeah,
that lineup is bananas.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
It's going to be so fun to watch. They're going to mash, and they're going to mash. The best part about it is they're going to mash, but they're also going to pitch really well.
Oh, and they're going to have so much fun.
Yep.
Like how much fun these guys are going to have. Like it's going to be one of those. It's going to be hard to root against them.
Yes, agreed.
Like whichever games they're playing, obviously when they're playing, if they play the U.S., I'm sure I don't know what the format is, but obviously I'll root for the U.S. But God, it's going to be tough to root against those guys. I mean, think about how much fun it is to watch Rafi play and Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Jose Ramirez. I mean, that guy is so fun to watch at bat, like take at bats. Then you add Juan Soto in, you add Julio Rodriguez. My goodness gracious! So that'll be a fun one.
And then just the mix of all those personalities is going to be electric.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Thursday, the 9th, we'll get to see those rosters, and I'm looking forward to seeing all the players that are in because I think it's going to be a really good World Baseball Classic, a loaded World Baseball Classic.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
All right. So another news, Blue Jays signed Chad Green. Take?
I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It does. I'll be honest. I would not pass myself off as the foremost green expert. But I think Toronto is in a unique position where I think they realize the talent that they have, the young talent that they have. I think they realize that they're in a division that's going to be a bit of a dogfight for a little while with, between the Yankees just being the Yankees, and we can dump on the Yankees all we want, but they're still a talented team that's tough to get through in the regular season. You have Tampa Bay, who has just been a thorn in the division side for however many years now.
Yeah.
Baltimore showed what they can really do. Like Baltimore last year up until August showed like that's a really good club. It's a team that you can't take for granted. You know, the Red Sox are hopefully going to be better this year, but who knows what the hell they're going to be. I think Toronto knows, like, listen, we have good young talent. We have talented players, guys that, you know, have fun, but we just are missing a few pieces. And I think they identified him as a piece that they can add to give them better depth. And we'll see. It could be one of those signings, though, too. Like, guys like that sneak under the radar. And then, like, in July at the All-Star break, you look and you're just like, what a signing.
Yeah.
Like, those are the guys. You know, let's take anything. I mean, obviously these big shortstops signing these big tickets, not that well deserved. But it's like the Greens. It's those guys that you look at halfway through the year and you're just like, Jesus, like what a signing. And I could see him being that guy for Toronto.
Yeah, and he's proven to be a very serviceable reliever. He was a starter for a little while, which was kind of a bad experiment for the Yankees in 19, but he's proven to be a very serviceable reliever. He's got an ERA around 3. You know, he'll throw a fair share of innings. You didn't get to see him much last year because of injuries, but a guy who's pitched in the AL East for his whole career, who's put up pretty good numbers that I think a lot of teams would be very happy to have a guy like that coming out of their bullpen. And I think for the Blue Jays, they continue to bolster their depth, add some more arms, and I certainly don't hate the move. It makes a lot of sense, and that Blue Jays team I do think is going to be a little bit better than I think they're getting credit for right now, because a lot of these moves that don't seem flashy, they're going to pile up and they're going to turn into creating that depth that they've been lacking.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, when we talk about Toronto, I think that's really the one thing over the last probably 2 years that we can really say is the top end talent is there. I mean, they don't really lack in that. I think the manager's good. He seems to, you know, get some good everyday development in production from these guys. It's the back end bullpen depth. It's depth. I mean, it's their ability to. They were the streakiest team, and I don't know if this is like statistically backs it up, but just in my head last year, they were either on a 9-game win streak or a 9-game losing streak. It's like they couldn't figure it out. You know, and that just goes to show, like, when everyone's rolling, they're nasty, but when that depth, you know, is tested, you know, they hit a bit of a skid. So,
yep, yeah, exactly. When that team last year, you're right, tons of top end talent, not a lot of depth. When somebody like a Bo Bichette went quiet or Vladdy wasn't on his game, you know, they struggled. You know, if things weren't really clicking, similar to how the Yankees have been the last few years, when the 2 or 3 key guys weren't clicking, the whole thing just kind of like stalled. But I think they've done a nice job of adding other parts, spreading things out, giving themselves some better options, and that'll be a dangerous team. The Orioles, I can't figure out what they're doing. They've really done nothing to improve. I know they're going to get now a full year out of Adley Rutschman, but I don't know what they're up to. They really haven't done anything to make me think that they're serious about being a contender for more than last year.
Yeah, I wonder if this is one of those, you know, we are already a year and a half ahead of where we were expected to be at this point. And I wonder if it's them saying, hey, like, we like where we're at right now. Let's see how it starts. And if we get into May and June and we got something rolling, we make a trade.
Yep.
Like, but I wonder if it's like, hey, let's not dig into the prospects yet. Let's see where we are this year. Let's see if last year was a fluke, and if this year sets us back on the pace we think, then we're okay with that. Like, I have no idea, but I wonder, because you'd think that based on what happened last year and how I don't even want to say they fell apart, but how they kind of just they couldn't bring it home in the end. You would have thought that was a team that was primed for, you know, maybe 1 or 2 big moves in the offseason to get them over the hump, and they've done the exact opposite. So I wonder if it's more of a let's slow things down and see where we are for real before we make a decision.
Yeah, and that very well could be true, because it's definitely one of those things where they came out of nowhere last year. They even traded away important pieces and then still competed, even though they shouldn't have. So yeah, maybe last year was kind of like a found competitive year, and they're going to go right back into the mode they were in to take a longer term perspective. So, all right. So let's dive into the next item here. We've got so obviously the Dodgers traded for Miguel Rojas, which interesting trade, and then they went ahead and extended him 2 years and $11 million. So, this is not just he's not a rental anymore. He's definitely part of their plan for the next couple of years. And the Dodgers had all those middle infield prospects at one point in time. Some of them have Gavin Lux has been kind of up and down and around. Interesting commitment to Rojas here.
Yeah, he's a good player though. Like I from the sheer fact that it's Miguel. Like I like the player, and so I think he fits well for like what he does. But he's 33 years old, so I mean it's not like this is not necessarily a guy that you're signing for 2 years and it's like, all right, let's ingratiate you into the Dodger culture for the next handful of years. Like he's already 33-year-old guy. But I don't know. I like the player. So, I think he'll do all right there. I wasn't expecting it. I mean, the contract wasn't up. He was already under contract.
Yep.
Like for the 2023 season. So, I don't know what the rush was to get him for the other 2024 as well. Like, I don't know. But interesting move. We'll see. I like the player.
And I agree. I like the player too. And I wish he would have ended up in Boston if they'd known Trevor Story was going to be out. He would have been a nice player to hang on to for a few years. But I think it's smart of the Dodgers to lock him up to get some flexibility. All indications are they're going to they're all in on Ohtani in the offseason. They're going to go and make some big splashes next year. We'll see. But I do like the player. I agree with you. Not a bad guy to have around because if nothing else, that's a cheap contract you can easily trade again.
Yeah.
And then, so the Red Sox continue to be looking for middle infielders here, talking about Rojas and the Red Sox. One name that's now popped into that list is Tony Kemp. So we've talked about Harrison from the White Sox. We've talked about Elvis Andrus. Now we got Tony Kemp in the mix. Tony Kemp's not a bad player.
No, he's not. I think I just looked up right before we got on here. I think he signed a 1 year, like 3.25. I think I saw in Oakland to avoid arbitration. So it's a 1 year deal. You probably wouldn't have to give up too much in the sense of like going the other way to Oakland. I like Tony. I mean, I think he's an electric kind of player. I think he's a guy that on a good team in the right lineup can really add a spark. I think the Sox could be that team because call it homerism, or maybe there's a little bit of being a homer in there, but I think the Sox are talent-wise are better than what you saw last year. I think last year's team was better than how they performed. I think this year they got a little bit better. I mean, we were hammering them all year long for not having a designated closer. They went out and they got that.
Yep.
They went out and they added also to the back end of the bullpen with Chris Martin. They pretty much essentially upgraded the DH spot. And I love JD, but Justin Turner is an upgrade over JD Martinez. Plus he can also play third base and spell Rafael Devers in the field on some of those extras. So, I mean, I think some of the moves that the Sox have made them better. And I expect Alex Cora to be better this upcoming season. I would love to see a guy like Tony Kemp added to that mix. So I don't know. I do like Arroyo. I think Arroyo can be really kind of dangerous for the Red Sox, especially offensively. The problem with Arroyo is the guy cannot stay healthy. Like he can't do it. And this isn't like a 1 year sample size where it's like, well, maybe it was an anomaly. Like, no, he just can't stay healthy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a trend for him, and it's been consistent, and he's not even a full-time guy and he can't get on the field, which is even more concerning. His body, how well would it hold up if he's actually playing a full load versus the split time?
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I love, like I said, I like what he does. I love what he does offensively. I think he can be a weapon. Like, you get guys on base consistently in front of Christian Arroyo, and like good things are going to happen more often than not for the Red Sox. Agreed. The problem is can you rely on him for 450, 500 at bats?
No.
like that's crazy, because if you can't, then he can't be a guy you mentioned to say, well, the Red Sox are dangerous, because it's like, well, you just never know if he's going to play.
Right. Right.
So, on paper, I like it, Arroyo, but I think in actuality and in reality, I would love to see the Sox go ahead and get a Tony Kemp or a Elvis Andrews or a additional middle infield guy that is proven and reliable to be able to play the amount of innings that you're going to need.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for them, with Story out, you've got to go for depth here. You've got to bring in 2 or 3 guys. You can roll them through. You can go with whoever's hot. Cora's got some matchup flexibility. You're not going to go replace Trevor Story. And I think Red Sox fans looking for a replacement to Trevor Story. You're not going to just go out and replace Trevor Story, but you can bring in 2 or 3 players that can mix and match and give you enough production so that you don't feel the full loss of Trevor Story. But you're not just going to wave your magic wand and the Heim Bloom's going to deliver a Trevor Story clone. They're going to have to go find a way they're going to have to manufacture that by having the right pieces playing together. And Mondesi could end up being a hidden gem in all this. He's got young raw talent. If Arroyo's healthy, he's a good option, but you can't bank on either of those two. You got to bring in some depth and see what happens.
Right. Well, that was going to be the Mondesi thing is another one where like you look at the raw talent, athletically, disgustingly freakish as an athlete, can't stay healthy. So,
right.
Again, I mean, we got a bit of a pattern here that I don't exactly love. And it's a bunch of these guys that we really like when they're on the field and they can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
So, maybe the trend breaks this year. I think I would love that for both of them to break the same trend. I mean, I would love to sit in August and have a problem of saying, hey, both Mondesi and Arroyo have been great and healthy all year. We got to figure out how to get them both at bats. Fantastic problem to have.
Yeah, great problem.
But can't bank on it.
It was like going back to the days of Brock Holt. Here's a utility guy that you were trying to find a way to get on the field 4 or 5 times a week because he was that good.
Right.
And, he was that valuable and he could, flex in and out. The Sox have missed that player for a long time. The funny thing was for years, Alex Cora was that guy for the Red Sox.
Sure.
So if anybody gets that concept, it's got to be Cora. And it's no surprise the team has struggled since losing a player like a Brock Holt because you don't have that same flexibility to mix and match and go with matchups. But I think I agree about this year. This team's 2 biggest holes last year where they couldn't close out games and hold leads. They fixed that. And they could not get consistent production out of the top of the lineup. And I think they fixed that. So
I do too.
It'll be a much different team this year. Are they a lot better than last year's team? Maybe not, but they're definitely better for sure.
Yeah, I think the end result, I think when we put a bow on the 2023 season, I'm not going to sit there and say the Red Sox are going to be in the World Series, but I think when we put a bow on the season,
Nick will, don't worry.
I think we will say that this team is a lot better than last year. Because agreed. I just think they're constructed a lot better already. Yep. I still think there's pieces to add. I don't think they're done. Still putting this team together in respect to maybe bringing some additional guys in, or maybe we get 1 or 2 surprises out of spring training, where we get maybe a couple of guys. I don't know, maybe a couple bullpen arms, or maybe a couple of young guys really flash that, hey, we can bring them up in the second half of the season, maybe add a spark if we need to, that kind of situation. I just think they're constructed a lot better this year, where the lineup construction can be more creative from Cora. I think the bullpen is much more solidified where guys are, like where they belong.
Yep.
And I think that'll help immensely. So I think we're going to look back at this team and say, yes, they lost Xander. That was tough. But kudos on Heim for putting together a team that Alex Cora can win with, because I think he'll be able to win with this team.
Yep, I agree. All right, so let's go with let's go with what's behind me here. So we unveiled the MLB The Show cover last week, and it was Jazz Chisholm, very colorful cover, colorful personality. So MLB The Show has this kind of collector's edition, the next step up version, and this year they decided to honor a Yankee, but we're not sure which Yankee. So here's your cover art. And for those of you at home that are wondering, That is not Aaron Judge. That is Derek Jeter. I feel like it. I feel it. I don't feel like that looks like Derek Jeter. I feel like it looks more like Aaron Judge. Nick's now referring to this cover as the Derek Judge cover, but I don't know. This is a struggle.
Yeah, it's weird. It's almost like the cover, they put so much like emphasis on like it's like, oh, obviously it's Jeter. Look at the wristbands. It's like, yeah, but you could have just got the face right. Like the face doesn't look anything like him.
Yeah, they got the skyline. They got the trophies. Like his glove looks like it's like a 13-inch outfielder's glove. It does not look like an infielder's glove. The face looks like Aaron Judge. He's like all ripped and muscular, which Jeter wasn't. I don't.
It's weird.
And then the face is definitely not his. And you're right. They got all the accessories and the kind of the peripherals and the background right, but they didn't get the face right, which is all you're going to be looking at.
Yeah, right.
It's
weird.
Yeah. Well, and Nick, who's a huge show fan, thinks the background is sick. And he's right. The background is sick. The cover art's great. They just messed up the guy in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But
the guy who it's about.
Right. Yeah, they're going to honor Derek Jeter with really bad cover art. That sounds like the most MLB thing they could do. So, all right. So let's move on here to the fifth inning. So we've been going through all the various pitches in Major League Baseball, and we've come around now to the sinker, which, interestingly enough, the sinker doesn't have a very long history. It's really a two-seamer that some of these guys figured out how to put downward pressure on and make it sink instead of cut. So really, we talk about the history of the sinker. It's not a very long history. It's really only been a pitch for 30 or 40 years, technically. Not a lot to choose from, but there are a number of guys that threw really good sinkers. So I'll start it off. The three that I had were Derek Lowe of the Red Sox. He might have the best sinker I've ever seen. That thing was devastating as a starter out of the bullpen. I mean, he threw everywhere. That was a really heavy sinker.
Yeah, you do the three, and then I'll go back to Derek Lowe.
So Derek Lowe, second for me was Kevin Brown. Especially when, I remember him in the World Series when he was the Padres, and that was the only pitch he can get anybody out with. That thing was nasty. It dove, it darted. And then lastly, maybe had the best sinker of them all, but didn't have the repertoire that really backed it up, was Brandon Webb. Brandon Webb threw a nasty, hard, heavy sinker. Unfortunately, he only really had a good few seasons when he could piece the other pitches together. He never had the complementary pitches that helped get outs. So almost like Rivera, he threw the sinker a lot, and people just sat on it because he couldn't come at you with anything else. But his sinker was nasty. Even when you knew it was coming, you still didn't hit it very hard.
Yeah. Yeah, those are three good ones. And surprisingly, for a pitch that's only been around for relatively a short period of time in comparison, there's quite a few good ones out there.
There are.
It's maybe it's because it's not. I don't want to call it not a difficult pitch, but to what you were saying, I mean, everybody can throw a two-seamer. If you get to that level, everybody, and it's just figuring out where to put the pressure and turning it over a little bit, and it does its thing on its own. I mean, it's physics, right? Derek Lowe, you have him on yours, so I don't have him on mine, but I mean, he would be on mine as well. Our generation growing up watching him pitch, whether it was out of the bullpen, whether it was his starter every 5 days, he was fun with the sinker because it was his out pitch, but not just to get ground balls. Like, he would use it to strike you out.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of pitchers that throw sinkers, and it's just they're okay with the bat getting on the ball. It's just going to be a ground out.
Yep.
One guy on my list, Tim Hudson, was that way. Tim Hudson was fine throwing that for contact because, did you know this? I didn't know this until I was looking it up. Tim Hudson, his average ground ball rate, 60%. 6-0. Oh, yeah. That is outrageous.
Yep.
Because he didn't care. He didn't care if he struck you out.
No.
You weren't going to hit it hard.
Tim Hudson would go 7 innings and throw 68 pitches because you're just rolling ground balls around.
You weren't going to hit it hard.
No.
But Derek Lowe could do that. But Derek Lowe could strike you out with it.
Derek Lowe, he used to love to run. He used to start that thing at like a left-hander's shoulder and watch it dip back over the plate. It was nasty. It was more than just it had a lot of the two-seamer action to it as well. So, yeah, Derek Lowe's a good one. But my three, so Tim Hudson was my first one. Hudson's a great pick. I love Huddy.
I have Jordan Hicks too now,
Yeah.
who I love Jordan Hicks, but
Yep.
I feel like it's cheating because it's like the ultimate power sinker.
Oh, it's
It
nasty.
and and I feel like it's not even a sinker. He just like throws it really hard, and it just physics like the spin rate's so crazy. The ball just kind of I don't know.
Yep.
But Jordan Hicks, it's called a sinker, so he's
It is.
Jordan
It
Hicks.
is.
And then I have a bit of an odd one, which is just I just enjoy watching him pitch, and that's Ranger Suarez in Philly.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he's got a great sinker.
yeah, he
It's a good call.
new onto the scene, but boy, he's I feel like his what we're going to see from Ranger Suarez this year from Philadelphia. I think he's going to be. Is he? I didn't know he was type 1 diabetic. No kidding. I think Ranger Suarez is going to have a 2023 season like we saw Framber Valdez have for Houston
Yep.
last year. There's just something about watching him pitch. Like there were outings that he had where he was hit pretty hard and guys were putting bats on the ball, but I feel like he was fairly unlucky with a lot of the hard contact he gave up,
Yep.
and it's like balls just leaking over the plate a little bit, or he has really good stuff.
He does.
Like his stuff is really good.
And he was great in
and
the playoffs.
He was. And I don't think it should be lost on the other pitchers that he's in that room with.
Mhm.
Guys like Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, they know how to pitch.
Yep.
Like those guys know how to pitch. And I don't think it's any surprise that he got better as the year went on, and then certainly into the postseason being around those guys. So I think he's going to have one heck of a year in 2023. I think he's going to be really good.
No, he's a good pick because he's really one of those emerging guys. Another guy that I had, he didn't make my list, but he was one of those ones I was considering was Adam Wainwright. I don't think a Wainwright is a sinker ball pitcher. I think of the other stuff he has, that's even better. But he does actually have a really good sinker. Yeah, the curveball to me was always the pitch. Like, that nasty 12-6 breaking curveball. But he's always had a good sinker too, and I just don't think of him as a sinker pitcher. But he's another good one. So, for those of you guys listening, if we've missed anybody, throw them out there. There's a lot of interesting sinker ball pitchers out there. So I'll be curious who we might have missed. So with that, let's move on to the all-time teams. So we are wrapping up here in the NL West. So this one was interesting. I do think there was a little I don't know, maybe a little bit of currency bias here. I don't know. We'll see. Because you've got an interesting mix in the West. You've got a lot of history and then like no history. So
yeah, right.
This was a challenging one. So let's go. Let's start in the NL West. Let's start with the Giants. So we had Giants catcher Buster Posey. I feel like that's a good choice.
Yep.
First base we had Bill Terry. Second base we had Jeff Kent. I forget who it was. Somebody was happy to see Jeff Kent on a list. Definitely an underappreciated second baseman.
Incredibly underappreciated.
And he was so good in San Francisco. He and Bonds were paired up there for a lot of years, making a lot of noise. Shortstop, we had Brandon Crawford. Third base, we had Matt Williams.
Left field, Matt Williams.
Yeah. And you probably put him on a couple of teams maybe, but he was really good in San Francisco. He wasn't quite as good elsewhere, but his best years were in San Fran. Left field, you got Barry Bonds. Center field, you got Willie Mays. Right field, you got Mel Ott. DH, Willie McCovey. You got Christy Mathewson starting, and then the relief pitcher, and we got some flack for this one. I'll explain why we chose Rod Beck.
Okay.
So we got some flack that Rob Nen could be the pick.
Yeah.
And statistically, Rob Nen was there a little bit less, and his stats were just about the same as Rod Beck. However, we went with Rod Beck, well, because we think he's badass, but
he is badass.
But secondly, when Rob Nen's one of those guys who was really good a few places. He was good in Florida. He was good in San Fran.
Yep.
But he's not a memorable guy. He was kind of there. He pitched. He left. Rod Beck, you would go to San Francisco Giants games. His jersey was everywhere. People had the hats with the long hair coming out of him. Like he was almost like a cult icon in San Fran when he was there at his peak. A guy that was loved by the fans, clicked with the fans. and had really, really good numbers. Rob
Mhm.
Nen had equivalently good numbers, but just another guy, a guy who was just kind of there and then wasn't. So we went with
That's
Rod
fair.
Beck more for like the fan connection and the fact that when you think of relievers, Rod Beck is one of those guys that everybody has a memory of because he was a slightly different cat.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, that was it was the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
That's fine. That works.
So yeah, went with Rod Beck. So that was the Giants team. Dodgers. This was an interesting one. So Dodgers behind the plate, we got Roy Campanella.
Yeah.
First base, we got Gil Hodges. Second base, we got some guy by the name of Jackie Robinson.
Jackie. Yeah.
Shortstop, we got Pee Wee Reese. Third base, we've got Ron Say. And then the outfield got a little interesting. So left field, we had Dusty Baker. Center field, Duke Snyder. Right field, Carl Furillo. And then we had Kirk Gibson DHing because we had to find a spot for Kirk.
Yeah. Sure.
What's interesting is the Dodgers don't have a super deep history of outfielders. You had a lot of guys like Gary Sheffield, who was only there for 4 years. Like you had a lot of guys that were there for a little while and really good.
Yeah.
So went with that group. Starting pitcher has to be Sandy Koufax.
Yeah.
And then reliever Eric Gagne.
Yeah, for that year.
I mean, again, the Dodgers don't have a great history of relief pitchers, but Gagne for a few years was literally untouchable.
Untouchable.
And I think the best piece of feedback was F. Gagne signed a Red Sox fan.
Oh,
so
buddy.
Because that experiment was awful when he came to Boston. When he was so bad.
When he came to Boston, and he had what was it, 6 consecutive outings with a home run given up.
It was so bad.
There was one like I was actively rooting for him to give up homers. I'm like, we're never going to see this again.
Right.
Because think about it. The only reason the Red Sox kept putting him in games is the Sox were actually having a pretty good season that year.
They were.
And it was to the point where like it was okay that we were putting him in because we need to continue to give guys, like, we can't waste arms and innings. Like we understand that he's not the old Eric Gagne, but we have to, like, any other way you slice it, if it's a younger guy, he gets sent to the minors.
Oh, for sure.
If it's a proven guy like Eric Gagne on a shitty team, they're just bringing up a new guy to see what else they got. Like, it was the perfect storm for a guy like Eric Gagne to continue to come into games and continue to give up home runs. It was what I don't think we're ever going to see that again. It was fantastic.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. I'm with you. Like, it reached the point where it's like, okay, I just want to see him implode. Come on, do it again. Do it again, big boy.
And like, I remember sitting there being like, he can't give up another one, right? Like statistics, like he can't give up another one, and he did.
Yeah, so
he sure did.
I think about, like, we had Jeff Reardon on the list for the Expos. He came to Boston. He was awful. We have Gagne on the list for the Dodgers. He came to Boston. He was awful. So you got a guy in Jeff Reardon, who Boston fans know as Jeff Rear End. You got a guy in Eric Gagne that Red Sox fans know as Eric Gagme. And he was so bad here, but he was so good in LA. But the Red Sox had a history of going and getting these guys when they were past their peak and getting crap results out of them, but thinking because they threw a name at you, you'd be happy. They did that for so long.
Yeah.
So for Red Sox fans, that one's not a fun one, but you can't argue with the guy's dominance over 3 or 4 years was legendary. All right. So we're going to go from a lot of history to no history. We're going to go to the Diamondbacks. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've got some history, and a lot of these names you've seen on other lists because they all came to Arizona for a little while. So Diamondbacks catcher Miguel Montero. Not a lot of great options, but Montero really was good. He was good for a while. First base, Paul Goldschmidt.
Got
I mean, he made his name there. Second base, Jay Bell, another guy who was underappreciated at second base. Guy could hit.
Okay.
Could field enough, but could hit.
Jay Bell.
You're going to love this one, Sean. Buckle in. Shortstop, Stephen Drew.
Stephen Drew. I knew it. It has to be, though.
It does. He was so good for like 4 seasons. He was so good.
It's either Stephen Drew or Nick Ahmed. And like, I like Nick Ahmed.
I do too, but it's a little
Nick
early
Ahmed,
for
another
that.
guy that can't stay healthy. But I like Nick Ahmed. Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, so Stephen Drew, and then our good friend Matt Williams is back.
Yeah,
Um,
he belongs there for them.
Yeah, for sure. Go to the outfield. Luis Gonzalez has to be there.
Mhm. Yeah.
Center field, Steve Finley. We're going to see Steve Finley again on this, again tonight. Right field, Justin Upton. He was really
Oh,
good there
yeah.
for a while.
Yep, he sure was.
And then DH Mark Reynolds, who hit
Yeah.
a lot of bombs when he was in
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Arizona. And then we close it out with starting pitcher Randy Johnson. I think that's a duh. And
Or Kurt. I mean, you could make a Kurt Schilling argument.
You could, although Randy's multiple size and all that were.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
you could make an argument that Kurt was really good. Brandon Webb had a good stretch there, but Randy was like far and above. And then closing out games, our good friend Byung Hyun Kim.
Aha, very good.
Yeah,
that's a good
another guy who came to Boston, didn't have the same results, but
but he wasn't terrible here though.
No, he was not as bad as like Jeff Reardon and Eric Gagne,
like those guys, but he wasn't great.
No, he was not great. So that's your Diamondbacks. San Diego. So one of my personal favorite players, just because he was so colorful at catcher, Benito Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
Benito was
he sure was.
He and Tony Pena are those two old school catchers that I absolutely loved. They had the most bizarre crouches, the weirdest mannerisms.
Oh, dude, Tony
they were
Pena,
just fun to watch.
When he was in Boston, he had some of the fun clips to look at, or those games when Roger Clemens was at the end of his Boston tenure, and Tony Pena was behind the plate, and he'd get frustrated if Roger wouldn't bury a splitter.
Yeah.
If he was hanging him, and you'd see him behind the plate, pounding on the dirt, telling him bury this thing, this thing. And then Clemens would, and he'd give that big Tony Pena fist pump.
Yeah.
He was he had some mannerisms back there.
Yeah, Benito Santiago and Tony Pena are my favorite old school catchers. They were quirky, they were fun to watch, they were intense. Benito had that weird batting stance on top of it all, the whole package.
Oh, that's right.
First base, Adrian Gonzalez. He was one of the best players in baseball when he was in San Diego. And then, of course, he comes to Boston and he was terrible. And then really his career just fizzled out after that.
I wouldn't say terrible in Boston.
That's right. He underperformed significantly to what was expected.
And not just the underperformed, but underperformed, it was kind of an ass about it.
Yeah, he was not liked.
He didn't. Well, remember he said he didn't like playing so many nighttime getaway games. Dude, that's what you're not in San Diego anymore. That's what happens.
Right.
You play games at Sunday at 7 so that you can get on ESPN, and then you get on a plane and you fly to Toronto or wherever. That's what happens when you're here. And he would go 0 for 4 and then wouldn't talk to the media afterwards. I don't know. And again, I'm not. These guys are humans. I get all that,
sure.
But I feel like he could have gone a better way about it. But man, he often gets remembered as a terrible Boston Red Sox player. This guy had some pretty good times in Boston offensively.
Yeah, he had some stretches.
Where it was you realize how talented he was. His ability to just, I swear there would be weekend series where he's I'm only going opposite field. Don't care where the ball.
He was so good.
I'm only going to right field.
Yep.
And it was consistent every at bat. It's this guy is something.
Yeah,
something special.
Other than David Ortiz, I've never seen another left-hander go opposite field so comfortably, consistently.
Yeah, probably.
Because a lot of your lefties are pull hitters. Your opposite field guys tend to be right-handers. The Miguel Cabreras, the Manny Ramirez kind of hitters. You don't see a lot of lefties that are big oppo guys. And Adrian Gonzalez loved to go opposite field. So did Ortiz.
Yeah.
But I think in Fenway, I think as a lefty you want to.
I think Ortiz had to grow into. I mean, we're getting on an Ortiz tangent here, but I think Ortiz had to grow into that.
Absolutely.
And people that are older than me can argue and certainly potentially could be right, but I just remember him. I remember the big time Ortiz consistently going at the monster to break a slump. I remember those things happening much later in his career.
Yeah,
where it was he just learned lets the ball travel in a little bit more, uses it to break a slump, and next thing you know, once he's rolling.
Yeah.
But you don't see too many highlights. You don't see too many 2003, 2004 highlights of him just hammering the monster.
No, when he left Minnesota, he was a dead pull hitter, and they were frustrated with him. He
Yeah.
got to Boston, and he was still pulling a lot, but I think as he got comfortable and got experience, he realized that left center is a great spot to go here.
Mhm.
And that's when his career really shifted, when he started to go opposite field, and now you can't game plan for him because he can
Right.
he can hit a pull home run or he can go opposite field on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, Adrian Gonzalez in San Diego, he was unreal and fun to
Disgusting.
watch. But and in Boston, he underperformed because he was kind of a jerk about it and seemed like a little bit of a baby. The fans ran him out of town. Second base, we had Mark Loretta, a guy that I used to love to watch play.
Me too.
Yeah, great.
Here too, in
very
Boston.
underrated.
I liked him in Boston.
Yeah, very underrated. Shortstop, we had Gary Templeton, and honestly, like we debated, the next best shortstop in Padres history behind Gary Templeton was Khalil Green.
Well, no, it's Xander Bogaerts.
Well, it is now, yeah, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
That's
it
who
was
played a
Gary
game for
Templeton
them.
or
Yeah.
Khalil Green, and we're like, man, I can't put Khalil Green on a greatest list.
Yeah,
That's a tough one. Third base, and this is a personal choice of mine. I pushed really hard for it. Was Ken Caminiti. I've been a long-time Ken Caminiti fan. I sent you guys the picture of the old glove with the flames up the back. That was the Ken Caminiti model. I was always a huge fan of Ken Caminiti. So the outfield, we went Dave Winfield in left, Steve Finley again in center. This guy by the name of Tony Gwynn in right. Brian Giles at DH. Giles was another fun guy. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, he was.
And then we had Jake Peavy starting, who I
Jake Peavy.
loved Jake Peavy at his prime. And then Trevor Hoffman closing out games for you.
Obviously, that's an easy one.
That's an easy one. That was a slam dunk. All right, and we'll close it out with a team with very little history as well, the Rockies. So catcher Yorvit Torrealba, first baseman Todd Helton, should be a Hall of Famer. Todd Helton
should be. Sure should be.
Second baseman DJ LeMahieu. Shortstop Troy Tulowitzki. Third baseman Nolan Arenado. He was so good in Colorado. Yeah. And I feel like he's even gotten better since, but he was unbelievable there. Left field Matt Holliday. Center fielder Carlos Gonzalez. Right field Larry Walker. We put Dante Bichette at DH.
Yep.
There were a lot of people asking for Andres Galarraga. We considered him closely too. Kind of weighed the two and went, flip a coin, pick one of them. They're both great choices. Starting pitcher Ubaldo Jimenez.
Dude, there was like a 3-year stretch where he was
unreal.
He was as good as there was in the National League.
Unreal.
And in that ballpark, that's saying something.
It is. That is not a pitcher-friendly ballpark. I mean, ask Mike Hampton how that worked out for him.
Yeah, right.
And then reliever Brian Fuentes, who really, hands down, was the best closer they've ever had.
Yeah.
Like, no debate. That was him.
Talk about Dante Bichette. I saw something on scrolling through TikTok the other day. He had a season, 96, maybe somewhere around there. Dante Bichette had a season where he hit like 297. I'm gonna have to double check these numbers, but somewhere around like 297, like 33 bombs, like 130 RBIs or something, and he had a negative 1.7 WAR.
Oh yeah, because he was a total defensive liability.
And they something about like there was someone that was doing the video.
Yeah,
was talking about how the number was indicative, they essentially punished him for playing in that ballpark. Is essentially what it was, and I was too young at that point, but I don't know. Were a lot of his home runs like wall scrapers at Coors Field? Like they made it seem in the video that like if he played a home game in St. Louis, let's say, he wouldn't have hit all those home runs. I don't know. I just found it interesting. It's odd to see a guy have a number like that and then a negative WAR.
Yeah, so the season you're talking about was 1999. He hit 298, 34 home runs, 133 RBIs. He played in 151 games. He wasn't even an all-star that season.
Well, I find that a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of insane. But the problem that Dante Bichette always had is he played a power hitting position. He had a lot of other guys putting up huge numbers, and so I think from a WAR perspective, he didn't get enough credit because he was going up against a lot of other guys that at that time period, the late 90s, were mashing tons of home runs. Sammy Sosa, all these other outfilders he was competing against.
That's fair.
But the other part of it too, he was an absolute defensive liability, and he couldn't run.
Yeah.
So, other than mashing the ball, he didn't do much else. So his WAR numbers are like really low because he's being compared against guys who play defense and hit the crap out of the ball. But I used to
Yeah.
love Dante Bichette. He had that crazy short stroke. And Nick brings up a good point. We had a tough time leaving Charlie Blackmon off the list because he's on the borderline of pushing some of those guys out. But Dante Bichette had that crazy short stroke, that the whip of the bat with the wrists. He was fun to watch. Andres Galarraga, same thing, big personality, a lot of fun to watch. Hard to leave either of those guys off. But that those Rockies they were fun to watch in the 90s, but they were not very good.
Yeah.
But boy, could they hit. They could that lineup. You had Helton, you had Walker, you had Bichette and Galarraga, you had those guys coming through the Rockies. Man, did they have guys that mashed.
And I don't care how bad they are. I love their uniforms. I always will.
Yeah.
They're such nice uniforms.
Yeah. No, they do. You're right. I don't hate them. So that was the NL West. If there's any picks you disagree with, make sure you tell Nick it was all his fault. They were his picks. All of them were his picks. The good ones I picked, the bad ones he picked. So make sure you blow Nick up. So that wraps up the NL West. We're gonna throw in a little bit of a change for next week. We're gonna get into some other cool stuff with some of these team constructions and categories. So stay tuned. So rounding third question. So what prompted this question is last week we saw the owner, I believe it was of the Rockies, or the GM of the Rockies, made the comment of, how on earth are we supposed to compete with teams like the Padres and the Mets, who are basically spending all the money in the world. Nick's figured it out. Who are spending all the money in the world possible to sign these players and build these super teams. And how are we supposed to compete if we're not one of those markets? And that was the first time. There's always some quiet criticism of Cohen. He was going to come in and spend a bunch of money. They wanted to put in a Cohen rule in the CBA. They didn't end up doing it. There's always a fear he'd do this. And sure enough, it's Steve Cohen. It's what he does. But that was the first time somebody had publicly said something. There's been more comments since. And Steve Cohen actually came out today and responded, basically, don't hate the player, hate the game. And his comment was something along the lines of, I don't make the rules. I just play by them, and how they run their organizations is up to them. So the question we came back with was, when you look around baseball, is the spending by the teams like the Mets and the Padres, is that good for baseball or is it bad for baseball? What's your take on that one, Sean?
Look, I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I think anyone that says that it's bad for baseball, I would love to know what they mean by that. I think having owners who are not just there to make money, but who are there to invest in their team as a commodity and invest in their team and give them the best possible chance to win. How can that be bad for baseball? Like I don't see how that can be objectively bad for the game. If we want to say like that teams going from 23rd in payroll to number 2 in payroll in a 1-year jump, like, is it a shock to the system for the game? Sure. But like, these players are getting paid what they feel that they deserve. And I'm not entirely sure. So Nick has said they're afraid the spending is going to take the parity of winning away. I'm not so sure there is a parity of winning right now. Like, before Steve Cohen came in and turned the Mets into a $450 million payroll, the Mets were certainly not baseball royalty, but you still had about 6 or 7 teams that were in the top tier. And then the rest of them, we've been talking for a long time about Oakland and Seattle and, the Chicago White Sox. Like, it's the same Colorado. It's the same teams year in and year out. Like, this isn't new conversations that we have to have because Steve Cohen, has come in and shaken the thing up. I think ultimately what Steve Cohen has shown is that there is a blueprint to do it. Like, you can come in and I'm sorry, I'm not worth $2.6 billion. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. My net worth is not $2.5 billion.
Because you're actually $5.2 billion, right, Sean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you have the money to spend, if you're an owner in Major League Baseball, you have the money to spend. If you don't want to spend it, that's fine. I'm not telling you how to spend your money. But if you don't want to spend the money to compete, don't get mad at fans of your team that want you to spend. Then sell the franchise. You're going to make money off of it. I mean, Major League Baseball, I don't care what people say about baseball's dying. Baseball's not dying. Like, you will make money off of your Major League Baseball franchise and sell it to somebody who will spend. Like, I think ultimately, I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that's what Steve Cohen with New York and what they're showing in San Diego, like, that's what they're showing. They're showing that there are guys out there that are willing to buy the franchises, spend the money that they feel is necessary for them to win. Is Steve Cohen going to be able to do this for the next 15 years? Probably not.
No.
Probably not. I mean, there's an end game to this, right? Yeah. He wants a title. He wants to bring a title to Queens.
Yeah, and what's interesting is Jeff Passan did a study on the Braves. It was either last year or year before. Basically making the claim of these teams claim they're broke, blah blah blah. Look at all the money the Braves made. The Braves made $100 million more the year after winning the World Series because of all the benefits of the World Series. Mm-hmm. So basically, the effect of winning a World Series is about $100 million to you in terms of merchandise, all the extra stuff, ticket sale boost, price increases. It's worth about $100 million. You go win a World Series, it's $100 million, almost immediate shot in the arm.
Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that off the top of my head, but that certainly makes a ton of sense. Right? I mean, so you spend but here's the thing. I mean, and these guys don't become billionaires by being stupid, particularly with money, particularly with business. There's no guarantee that you win the title, and I think that's the shy away from it. Right? Is if it was a 70% chance that if I spent $200 million than I wanted, $200 million more than I wanted, but if there was a 70% chance that I get 150 back the very next year because we won the title, I'll do that.
Yep.
But I mean, that's the problem is there is no guarantee. And I get that part of it. But goddamn, man, I mean, what did you think was part of buying a franchise? Like, what did you think it was to own any professional sports franchise? Like, you have to spend money. Like, you have to compete with where the rest of the league is.
Right.
And particularly, you bought a team in a league that doesn't have a hard salary cap like we see in the NFL, for example. Like, you knew what this was. You knew when, and I don't know, just the royal you, but like, you knew what it was like when you bought the Rockies. Like, you saw what the Yankees did every year. You saw what the Red Sox did. Like, so the fact that this is coming, like, kind of out of the clouds and all of a sudden be like, whoa, this is bad for the game. I just don't see it. I'd love to have a conversation with somebody who truly believes that it is bad and maybe I'll learn something. But, I just think the way that baseball, like, if you're just looking at it from the perspective of, like, you're a fan of the game, I don't know how you can be negative about it.
Right. So I'll play devil's advocate for you because I'm a money guy. I'm a finance guy by trade. So I enjoy this conversation. So the Mets payroll is projected at $468 million. There are only 3 teams in baseball that generate enough revenue to pay that. And the Mets aren't even one of them. So I had posted a link to an article put together by Total Sports that was done in partnership with Statistica that does all this financial compiling. And when you look at across Major League Baseball, so we'll use the Mets as an example. The Mets last year generated $302 million. So say they generate $302 million again. They spend $468 on payroll. So Steve Cohen is effectively writing a check to the organization for $166 million to make up the difference. But in addition to that, he's got to pay the front office, the staff, game day ops, minor league ops, minor league players. So in reality, Steve Cohen's probably going to write a $250 million check into the team, his personal money into the team, just to break even next year on that payroll. So can he do that for the long term? Steve Cohen's so friggin' rich, he can probably do it for a while. But when you look at the Rockies, I'll pick on them. Their total revenue is $270 million. They operate at basically a break even, and their payroll is only $150 million because they've all those other costs. Mm-hmm. The majority of these major league teams operate at a break even or a loss, except for a few of them. And the few that operate, and this is a bad look for the Red Sox, but the 3 teams with the highest revenue in baseball, the Dodgers at $565, the Yankees at $482 million, the Red Sox at $479 million. Those are the only three teams that can actually they can't even afford a $468 million payroll because they'd be upside down too when all was said and done. But those are the only three teams that generate that kind of revenue. And then you got the Braves at 443, the Chicago Cubs at 425, then it drops to the Astros at 388. So like the level of payroll Steve Cohen's playing at, Major League Baseball can't afford. The teams can't afford. The owners can't afford. And they're not going to own these billion-dollar franchises that just burn money out of their personal pocket. So is it bad for baseball? From a competitive standpoint, probably not. Because to your point, they still have to win. You still have to put the players in the field that win. The Yankees have proven for friggin' 20 years. You can spend anything you want, and you're not going to win very often. You've got to have that right team. But that level of payroll that Cohen's playing at is unaffordable to baseball. And he's setting a precedent for these contracts of these players are going to be looking for $43 million a year if you're Justin Verlander, if you're Max Scherzer. You're going to be looking at Francisco Lindor making $34 million. Like that's what baseball is scared of. Right. These teams can't afford these contracts at that level. So a great example is Francisco Lindor, 10 years, 341. Trey Turner, 11 years, 300. You've got Bogarts, 11 years, 280. Like these contracts that were signed in this past offseason are a lot less. So to Nick's point, there's no profit left to invest for most of these teams. They are spending all of it just to operate because it's not inexpensive to operate these teams. And the level of payroll Cohen is at is dangerous if that begins to reset the market for these players. So you're going to have guys like Shohei Ohtani go look for a 10-year, $480 million contract. I mean, that's going to be two markets that can afford him. So now you're going to have players that can only migrate to certain places. So the general consensus is from a competitive standpoint, maybe it doesn't matter, but it is unaffordable to baseball to continue to pump up these contracts like Cohen has. And that's the concern, is that it's going to reach a point where you're going to have three studs and a bunch of minor leaguers because they just can't afford anybody else but that. And that's when you see contracts crater and go back the other direction.
Right. But that's the end result of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. That's years away. Like that's years away from something like that happening. And while I mean, you certainly know the stuff better than I do, certainly much more fluent in it. Not to be a dick, but like the question was, is it bad for baseball? Not is it bad to own a baseball team? I wouldn't want to own a team because like you said, I mean, these are billion-dollar things that are barely breaking even. I wouldn't want to own one, but it's not bad. Right now, the state of baseball is not worse because of what Steve Cohen and the San Diego Padres are doing. As two examples.
It is not hurting the product in the field at all right now.
If for anything, what it's showing is that if you are a billionaire, a multi-billionaire, you can do this on a short-term basis.
Yep.
What it does suck for, who it does suck for, is the small market owners. Because, I mean, you laid it out pretty stately there. Like, it doesn't seem like there's much of a profit that these guys are getting on a year-over-year basis. Although I do find it like these guys are all multi-millionaires, if not billionaires. Like they're not like it's their companies or their groups that are owning. Like there's got to be some sort of ridiculous tax revenues and write-offs. Like these guys aren't losing money the way that we think they're losing money. Like even though they're spending $100 million over what the team makes, like these owners aren't $100 million less rich than they were the year before. Like I just find that, and I don't know, I just find that so hard to believe. No one would own sports franchises.
Well, right. It's the equivalent.
No one would own any.
It's the equivalent to like, starting tomorrow, Sean, you're now going to pay to go to work. Like if you're an owner of a team and you just spent, $3-4 billion on a team, you're not going to write checks into it every year to keep it running. Like that's insane. At some point, the thing should make a little bit of money and create a return on the investment that you made. And a guy like Cohen, he has no problem for the next few years going and spending like crazy because he'll pump that revenue way up. He'll get a new TV contract. He'll come out of this thing in the back end feeling okay because he can pour $1 billion of his own personal money into it to pump it up.
Sure.
And he'll get that valuation back when he goes to sell it. So a guy like that's not afraid. But you look at a team like the Rockies, the Rockies are making $270 million. They can only afford a payroll of maybe 125 to 150. They're saying we can't compete. And our organization, our team's only worth 1.3 billion. Cohen's team's worth 4. We're not playing on the same playing field here. So to get back to what you said, Sean, is it affecting the product in the field right now? Absolutely not. But in 3, 4, 5 years, is there going to be like a Major League Baseball player contract crash where values go way down? There may have to be. There's got to be a correction at some point because you can't pay every top tier starter $43 million a year.
Right. So, but that again, and again, just to keep on that line of thinking, and it's likely when, not if that happens. So when that does happen, is that actually going to impact the product on the field? Probably not, because everyone's going to have to come down. What it's going to do is upset the Players Association, and it's going to upset the players and the agents, and that's, I get that, but it's still probably like, and here's where Major League Baseball has the upper hand, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term. There's no competitor. Like it's not like when this inevitably does happen and the contracts have to come back down because only one team in baseball can afford it and not one team can pay every player, right? So the contracts are going to come down. The players are going to be pissed. There's no competitive league that they can run to.
Right. That's it.
So baseball is kind of going to be like, yeah, man, that sucks. Like, you guys let this get out of control when the Players Association was licking their chops and they let Trey Turner sign for 300 plus and Francisco Lindor and Xander Bogaerts for 280 and Verlander for 43 a year. Like, you guys were fine licking your chops then, but now you got to pay the piper. And again, I know it's not that simple. Like, I know it's not that simple.
Yep.
But again, when we boil it down and we talk about product on the field, I don't think the product on the field is going to suffer because these players, they're still the same players that we love to watch today. It just sucks that they're not going to make the money in 4 years from now that they would this year, but that's kind of how it goes.
Right. So the only argument MLB has that the product in the field has suffered is the Washington Nationals. So the Nationals went for broke. They loaded up. They overspent. They deferred money, and they damn near went bankrupt this year to the point where they basically sold everything off. So the Nationals are becoming the cautionary tale to baseball of, hey, you can do this go for broke, win a World Series thing, and great, you hoisted your trophy and kudos to you, but you damn near went bankrupt in the meantime. MLB had to step in and help steer them through it. And then in the meantime, you dumped off every player that matters. Now the team is a joke. So you think the Washington Nationals aren't in a small market. They're in DC, but they share it with Baltimore. But the Nationals becoming the cautionary tale of, this is what happens when a small market team goes too big. And if you're a team like the Rockies, who's an equivalent size, you're looking at that going, I can't afford to go win a World Series. But I do think Major League Baseball had a chance in the CBA to put a floor and a ceiling in, and they chose not to. And didn't even discuss it. It just got tabled immediately. That was their chance to fix this. Now, as Cohen said, he's playing by the rules they made. I'll pay salary tax. I'll pay your cap charges and your luxury taxes, whatever. Who do I make the check out to? I'm not afraid. But at some point, that's going to start to get a little costly.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting topic, and it's something that baseball is afraid of. When Cohen came in, they've not had an owner of his status before, of his wealth. And he's obviously pushing already in his second season to change the rules. And honestly, they're going to put the target on their back of, we want to beat those guys. And if they don't win, he's going to look like an idiot. If they win, he's going to be treated like a hero. And now it's all on him.
Yep.
But it'll be interesting to monitor that, because I do feel like MLB and the owners are not loving where this offseason went. But all right, let's move on. We got some news to talk about here. So one thing I wanted to bring up that wasn't part of the original agenda, but I saw the news. MLB Network and YouTube TV have broken off discussions to extend that contract and continue to put baseball on YouTube TV. MLB is also in talks to reclaim the regional rights from Bally Sports. Bally Sports controls 19 markets. So on the surface, a lot of baseball fans today are saying, oh my God, why does Major League Baseball hate the fan? Why is the game not available? What's happening is MLB Baseball has hired a kind of TV and media kind of guru here, and I'm blanking on his name right now, who's actually working to bring all of the media together so they can eliminate local blackouts. So what MLB is trying to accomplish is to take out as many of these little regional markets as they can. Obviously, if you're a Red Sox or Yankees fan, you're screwed, because the Yes Network and NESN aren't going anywhere. But in other markets where, like, Bally Sports was in or YouTube TV was picking up games. They're trying to take MLB TV and turn it into a national streaming platform. So if they take out these other carriers, they can actually have far fewer blackouts on MLB TV and in the national networks like ESPN. Believe it or not, I don't know. I'd love to actually see them do something where the media is not such a mess, but that's the story there. I would be really curious how this ends up playing out. But as an MLB TV subscriber, Sean, I mean, you've lived the blackout nightmare at times. Is this a big enough problem for MLB to be pulling the plug on other networks?
I don't know, man. I love the idea of baseball trying to give baseball fans as much access to the product as possible.
Yep.
Right. I don't know if there's ever going to be like, this is the right time where they should wait an extra year or they should have done it last year. Like, I don't know. The thought that baseball recognizes that it's a problem, the fact that they're listening to their customers who, I mean, all you have to do is go on social media during the summer, pick any night, and you scroll through and people are bitch moaning and complaining about games being blacked out. So at least they're listening, and it seems like they're trying to do something about it. I love it. I mean, I love the product. MLB TV being.
Yep.
I love it. I literally use it once the baseball season, every single night when the baseball season starts. It does suck that the blackout's happening and I can't just throw a Sox game on. You kind of got to jump through a couple extra hoops to get the NESN app, which is terrible and a whole nother issue. But it is what it is. I mean, it's just you just make your peace with it. That's not going away. But you look at somebody like Nick. I mean, Nick said it on the show before, living in North Carolina, right? Like, he's blacked out from like 4 different markets. He's blacked
from everywhere.
out from Atlanta, from Baltimore, from DC. Like, and like he doesn't even live in any of those cities. It's crazy. So yeah, right on cue. There it is. So I don't know. I guess it's my long-winded answer. So I think it's good. If it takes a year or two, I mean, it's going to suck kind of in the meantime. But I think the fact that they recognize it and they're trying it, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So they hired Billy Chambers, who's worked for a couple of regional sports networks, to begin this consolidation and try to solve this blackout problem. So the YouTube TV thing on the surface seems like a problem for baseball. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It depends on how quickly they resolve this problem. I think on the surface it looks bad because, again, MLB doesn't do a great job of explaining what the hell they're up to. But that appears to be their end goal of actually getting out of this blackout problem, this blackout nightmare they've been in, which I would love. I had MLB TV 2 or 3 years ago, and I got frustrated because like half the games I wanted to watch, I couldn't watch. I'm like, well, what the hell? And for Nick, I mean, he loses three markets. Granted, the Nationals are one, and who wants that one anyways? But it's tough because MLB is so condensed into like the Northeast, the Southeast. You got a whole bunch of nothing in the Midwest out to the West Coast. But you have a lot of markets that are able to see no games because of all these ridiculous regional carriers who have these exclusive rights that MLB never should have done. It'd be great to see MLB TV be a national streaming platform where I can just pick any game and watch it. But if this gets them there, that'd be awesome. If it's just more of the same nonsense and we just keep dealing with blackouts, then yeah, they are restricting access, and that's bad for baseball. And ironically enough, I was listening to a podcast today from Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a big time entrepreneur and marketer.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually spent 5 minutes railing on baseball for this exact thing. He said his comment was, I guarantee you, MLB is a brand problem. Nobody knows the brand. Nobody knows the game anymore. And he goes, I guarantee you could walk the top 5 players into my office and 90% of the people that listen to this podcast would have no idea who the hell they are. And he goes, the sad part of it is you got guys like Mike Trout in there, and Mike Trout may go down as one of the best players in baseball history. But the average sports fan or the average person in America has no idea who that guy is. And he's right. And if you take more access away and make these guys less, make it more difficult for people to watch them, it's actually, you're going the wrong direction, MLB, and making it worse. So I'd love to see them fix this. I will believe it when I see it, because MLB's got a history of saying they're going to do something and they do something else, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah. I mean, on its face, it looks like they're trying now. And I give them at least I'll give them a small benefit of the doubt and say that they say they're trying, and hopefully they can work something out. I'm probably not the best guy. Like I'm a sucker. Like I'm gonna buy it anyways. Like I'm a sucker, right? Like it's like blackouts fixed, blackouts aren't fixed. Like they know
Yeah.
my credit card's gonna run.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah, fair.
unfortunate, but I'm probably not the guy.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I think your diehard fans like us, we're going to suffer through it because that's what we do. But your marginal fan who might do it,
Right.
may choose
Yeah, no,
not
I
to
get
for
that.
that reason. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that.
So, all right. In other news, Shohei Ohtani signs a deal with New Balance. And immediately, I'm pretty sure I saw Nick Fanning and Nick Arno making statements that now Shohei Ohtani's coming to Boston because he signed with New Balance. Let's pump the brakes on that theory a little bit here. He signed a deal with New Balance, which is interesting because he is going to be really the first major headliner that New Balance has had. They've had a lot of athletes come through there, but they've not had that kind of consistent headliner, especially in baseball. Ohtani is going to bring in, he brings in the international flair, superstar. That's interesting. I don't expect to see Major League Baseball running around with New Balance cleats necessarily, but I think that's going to move the needle a little bit.
Yeah. No, we'll see. I like New Balance stuff.
I'd say they make a great shoe. And for those of us that have kids, I love a pair of white New Balance with the tall socks on.
Yep.
Yeah, that official dad look when you're mowing the lawn.
Total Air Dads. Yeah.
Air Dads. Those are the ones. But I think it's cool. I think it's nice to see New Balance land a superstar and continue to take that company and push them into new areas. Dodgers are going to retire Fernando Valenzuela's number. I think that's cool. He was, we talked about Rod Beck being a cultural icon. I mean, Fernando Valenzuela is still a cultural icon in Los Angeles.
They're doing it in July, and it's going to be like a 3-day event. Did you see this?
Yeah, I saw that.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Fernando Fest.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like a guy like Fernando Valenzuela, you can't celebrate him in like a pregame thing. Like it's got to be multiple days. It's got to be a party. It's got to be festive.
Oh, 100%.
Because that dude was colorful and fun.
100%.
And then we found this cool graphic of the rarest things to happen in baseball, and we'll share it on the Facebook page here in a little bit. But it goes from the rarest to kind of less rare. But these are all things that have happened less than 400 times in baseball history. But the top 5 rarest things to happen in baseball history: 2 grand slams in 1 inning has happened once.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Fernando Tatis, right?
Senior.
Yeah. Sorry. Senior.
Yeah.
4 grounded and double plays in a game. Could you imagine grounding into 4 double plays in a game? What a terrible day.
So that's by the same player, right?
I'm pretty sure this is the same player who's done it twice.
Same team.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the same player grinding into 4 double plays in the same game.
Right. Okay. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Taking an offer with 4 double plays. That would suck.
Oh.
And this next one, 3 hits in an inning. I didn't even realize that somebody had 3 hits in a single inning. That's a wild one. I mean, just to get 3 at bats in an inning, that's a hell of an inning.
I mean, that's
that's a hell of an
crazy.
inning. So
yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, so 3 hits in a single inning has happened 3 times. The fourth one is 4 people have hit a grand slam in their first career at bat. One of which is Daniel Nava, right?
Daniel Nava, yeah.
Yeah, boy, did that guy burst onto the scene.
Didn't he hit it off John Lackey, if I'm remembering correctly?
Oh God, I think it was against the Angels. Yeah, it probably was Lackey. I remember it was against the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So grand slam first career at bats happened 4 times, and then 20 strikeouts in a 9-inning game is 5th. And that's happened 5 times. So you got Clemens twice, you got Kerry Wood. Who are the other 2? That doesn't matter.
I'll tell you, like, when we were looking through these, there are a couple that stood out as, I can't believe it's happened that many times, or I can't believe it's only happened, right? Like, 3 sack flies in a game. I can't decide whether I'm surprised it's only happened 11 times or that it's actually happened 11 times. And I wonder if 10 out of 11 were like Ruben Sierra, because that dude was just the king of sack flies.
Oh, that's right.
That dude would hit more sack
Scherzer.
flies than
I forgot-
anyone.
Forgot about Scherzer.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You know,
you're right. The
so,
sack
like-
fly one is interesting.
Or also, inside the park grand slam 224 times.
I know.
I've never seen an inside the park grand slam.
No, I've seen inside the park home run. We can thank our friend Jared
Sure.
Duran for one.
Sure. Inside the park grand slam, but again, that happening 224 times.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure 221 of them happened in like the early 1900s.
Which, right.
Yeah,
It's funny. Nick said at the Polo Grounds. I was just thinking the same thing.
But here's one that blew my mind. A perfect game lost on the 27th batter. That's happened 14 times. So 14 times the pitcher was 1 out away from a perfecto. And like I remember, was it Armando Galarraga? Was that a perfect game?
Oh yeah. Well, he ended up with the no-hitter because they called it an error.
That's right.
So he ended up getting the no-hitter, but he didn't get the perfecto.
Yeah, which is mind-blowing to think that 14 times somebody's had a perfect game and lost it on the 27th batter.
Yeah,
Amazing.
13 times they were probably legitimate. One time was stolen by Jim Joyce.
Yeah, so we'll share the graphic. It was really cool to see some of these records because, to your point, Sean, some of them I look at and I go, I had no idea that it even happened once, let alone this many times.
Right.
And there's others I'm like, how has that not happened more often?
Like unassisted triple play 15 times.
Yeah.
15 times an unassisted triple play.
Yeah,
I did one in
unassisted is
Little
hard.
League, so maybe they should say 16 times because that was pretty badass. But 15 times in Major League Baseball an unassisted triple play, that's crazy.
Yeah, and the immaculate inning, only 110 times an immaculate inning been thrown. That's wild.
Yeah, what's that? 9 pitches, 3 strikeouts?
Basically, it's 9 pitches, 3 strikeouts. It's literally nothing happened, but just pumped in strikes. So yeah, so we'll share this stat with this graphic. It was really cool to see some of these records I didn't even realize were records. But baseball's a funny game. You have all these sorts of things that happen.
The best.
Any other news we missed, Sean?
No, I don't think so.
So I think we got it all covered. So
World Baseball Classic and yeah, I think we're good.
Well, I know Nick was afraid we wouldn't be able to make it to the end, but here we are. So I'm proud of us, Sean.
Here we are. Oh, hell yeah, man.
All right. Well, we'll put out a question of the week here in the next couple of days, and hopefully we'll see everybody again next Monday night. Remember, Thursday, World Baseball Classic roster is released. Don't miss it. Those are going to be some awesome rosters.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to them.
All right. See you, everybody.